My name is Samantha and I'm here today to talk about overcoming addiction. Before I experienced addiction, I was, I guess, looking back on it, what you would call a child of abuse, and there was all forms of abuse. And I now come to understand that that was what allowed me to fall so deeply into addiction. I was addicted to alcohol, pot, out of all things, and on some level ice. And this was all when I was a teenager. And as a result of the childhood abuse, I lived on the streets, as that felt like a safer place than what home did. And in order to belong, because all children want to belong, the crowd that I would meet on the streets were all into drugs, and it became not only my way of belonging, but my way of escaping. In the midst of my addiction, I felt it was a long process, depending on what I was addicted to and what substance. In the beginning, it felt normal. It felt very accepted. It felt like that's what everyone was doing. That's how you grow, how you evolve and live your life as a child, and as a teenager, you just take substance. It felt like how you drink. You drink to black out. I would think I was 10 or 11, and that was my go-to. And towards the end of the addiction, in my 20s, it was soul-crushing, because I knew I had more potential and I couldn't shake it. I really didn't know how to shake it. I spent years trying to control my drinking, and I'd got rid of drugs a lot earlier, and I stopped many substances, but there was one that was so readily available and so socially encouraged. It's in movies, it's in media, it's painted as this glamorous addition to your life, when it's just a toxic poison, and it's a substance which, as now a human that's spending her life trying to become more conscious, it was just something that kept me, and what I believe many people, is unconscious. And so my addiction went from me feeling like it was normal to it was the most debilitating thing, and I couldn't explain it to people, and I couldn't really get help from others, because it's this internal relationship that you have with that substance. And I think until you deal with what causes you to be so dependent on that external substance, people can tell you to stop, people can cut off friendships, people can tell you how poor your behavior was, but that doesn't do anything, because it doesn't address the core wounding. And there was also people that said I was fine and that there wasn't a problem, and that I'm overthinking it, or that I'm fun. And what I will say about addiction, it's how you feel. I think a lot of people can compare my addiction to something much more extreme, or what I was like 10 years before, but no one can ever truly understand the shame and the guilt. And when people would go out socially planning to get drunk, I would go out going, I hope I don't. And it became very obvious to me that the only way to guarantee that I wouldn't go and behave destructively in a way that I couldn't control, I didn't know what Samantha was going to come out, was to stop altogether. I think one of, looking back, the trickiest things with that addiction is that I didn't have family. So I left home at 12 and I never went back. And that I still, to this day, think it was the smartest choice. It was a hard choice, but I'm proud of that 12-year-old Sammy, because it was strong and wise. As a result, when facing the addiction, which partly or probably largely was stemmed from that, I didn't have that parental support. I didn't have that unwavering love or connection. And I believe that one of, if not the only, or certainly the strongest cure for addiction is connection. And we live in a world where we chastise those who need help on that level, and that only exacerbates the problem. So I think not having that support network from, I guess, if we were in tribes, we would call it elders, really just I would be curious what impact it would have had if I did have a supporting family to help me through that. And I believe if we truly have enough love in our hearts, in our bodies, in our experience of life, then we wouldn't rely on addiction. And my particular issue was and is alcohol and drugs and things that can allow me a quite substantial escape. But we're all addicted to our minds, our phones, any escape from the moment. Mine was just maybe stronger than most because the need to escape was more powerful. My first instance of knowing that I needed to change something, I think, was about when I was 17. And in a period of a couple of weeks, I had my boyfriend at the time mention that it wasn't healthy, that every weekend I would say, I don't remember what I did. And that was, I think, 17 or 19. So from 10 till 19, that was 9 years of extreme alcohol abuse and drug abuse before I even realized it was a problem. And then in that similar period, there was a girlfriend of mine that told me about my behavior, and whilst I thought it was funny, she was appalled. And it kind of took the friendship teared a little bit. And that was the first time I had this pang of guilt and shame. And actually every time I drank since that moment, I had that guilt afterwards. And it was that day or that week that I wanted to start getting a control on my alcohol. And it was 2 years after that, perhaps even a bit more, that I came up with the idea to completely stop. And even that was hard. I did it and then didn't and then did and then didn't. And I really do believe that until you look at the root cause of addiction, it will come back. And it's something I still look at to this day. You know, it's with me. My life now is without substance, and I'm happy and I'm joyous, and I create and I love the moment, and I love myself, and I love life. And there is always this deep fear of what if, you know. There are times of recent years that I've had it one drink and it's turned into 20, if not that week, the week after, because I convinced myself that I've grown, I'm happier, I'm evolved, I'm not what I was, I'm in a different situation. And that substance is just the reminder of everything that was painful in my past. I've associated, it's anchored together, and I know I'm not in a great place if I desire a drink, and it doesn't mean I have to action on it. It just means I need to look at what's driving me to want to escape, because I can't speak for others. But for me, alcohol is just a procrastination from life, puts it on hold at the best, and at worst is an escape from things in yourself and in your experience of the world that you don't want to or can't or don't feel like you can soak in that moment. When I first wanted to stop alcohol, I actually called up a therapist who I still see today, and I'm on a completely different side of the world now, but I Skype her. She's been with me for 10 years, which is incredible. And I remember going in and I said to her, it was like the free 15-minute consultation, and I said to her, how long will it take me to stop drinking? 1 or 2 sessions. I just want to understand it. And I went in and she started talking about, asking about my childhood. And I remember I was so naive and thought I was so strong. I remember thinking and saying, I don't want to talk my childhood. I don't understand how it's relevant. And I think, and I felt at the time, that if anyone looked at their childhood and dissected it and complained about it, that they were weak, that they were playing victim. Whereas, you know, fast forward 10 years, there was certainly a period of that discovery that I have and probably will continue and played victim, but I'm so far out of that because I can look at it clearly. I was so thwarted by the desire to be positive, the desire to be a good-hearted, open person, that I never acknowledged abuse. Everything that happened to me, I flipped it. And there was a time probably about 2 years into therapy where I just got flooded with memories of the truth of my childhood. And it was shocking. More memories kept coming back. And but that was my first experience of getting help. And then I stopped kind of cold turkey, and I started a relationship where someone didn't drink, which was wonderful. And then when that ended, that was my first ever experience of love. I wasn't loved by my family, and then I lived on the streets, and it was obviously people quite toxic. They had their own stuff to deal with. And when that relationship broke down, everything in me shattered. It took me 4 years, if not longer, because at 21, I met him, and he was 31. That was my first experience of love, and I started to believe in the world. I started to accept and express my emotions for the first time in my life. I started to see vulnerability as a strength. I started to see femininity as not just a weakness, but perhaps one day maybe a strength as well. And when he went, all my abandonment issues came up, and I started drinking again, and then stopped, and then started, and then stopped, and then started. And I ended up going to AA rooms, which I still don't know how I feel about them. I guess there's, in some places in the world, I've traveled a lot, there's beautiful connections and there's inspirational people, and a part of me felt too good for them, or too different, or too special, and then you relapse. And then I've moved to a place in the world now where I don't particularly love the energy in those rooms. It seems to zap me. So I'm back to being on my own with it. And the way I look at it now is I just got to love myself so much that the desire to punish myself or escape from my life is just so far removed and so low in vibration from where I'm operating that it just doesn't enter my mind. And there's been moments of escapism. I was injured and I dabbled, and I'm very grateful that the moment I felt like it was going to lose control, I've cut and completely stopped. And I don't know what will happen in the future, but what I feel like is I kind of have this pattern, like I'll go a few years and I think I've overcome it, and then I'll try it once, and 3 months later I'm getting drunk and wasted and can't control it. And so it seems to be this pattern with me of 2 years on or off, and then 3 months trying it, and then it just doesn't feel good. And I mean, hopefully over time I just lose the desire completely to ever go back on it, because I can never guarantee that I can drink responsibly. And, you know, it's scary because it's like, what if it wasn't that substance? You know, it could have been anything. And I'm just so grateful that I did stop all the other stuff sooner. And I look at my relationship to alcohol as a reminder that I need to heal a bit more, and a reminder, a reflection almost, as how much do I love myself, and how much am I allowing myself to experience and feel joy in my life, regardless of what I want to be, regardless of what I want to be, regardless of what I want different. It's always going to come back unless I can accept life force and love that runs through me. And whilst that may seem hippie to many people, it's served me in ways that, you know, you look back to my childhood when I was living on the streets and shooting up ice and, you know, living a life that most people wouldn't even believe in movies. And I look at where I am now, and I put a huge amount of responsibility, or I put a lot of it to my connection to the universe, and my desire to keep an open heart, and my desire to see the world as good regardless of what's going on in the material plane. And I feel so connected to something so beautiful. And when I drink, I don't. And flip, when I don't feel connected to that, I drink. So I just got to make sure I stay connected to all the things that feel good. And to me, that's meditation, connection, nature, laughter, the simple things, the things that we don't think are important, but we'll probably look back when we're 80 or 90 and realize that was what we're here on this earth to do and to experience. If I could give anyone who's going through addiction, who knows people in addiction, advice, it's a tricky one because I could talk about this for hours. There's so many things to say on it. If you're in addiction, I would try and be as compassionate towards yourself as what you can be, because exacerbating that shame or the guilt or that negative feelings towards yourself will exacerbate the desire to consume and to escape that. And so as hard and almost as impossible as it may feel, bringing love back to yourself. And I think being open about it, I think the more you name it, a lot of people seem to be in denial to others, that they think if they say it, it makes them weak. Whereas, I like to think I'm a pretty strong person, and I'm here speaking about it on camera, and I can't imagine anyone looks at me as weak for saying it. And I imagine the same about you. If you talk about it openly, there's such a beautiful strength, and you're open to be supported. And same with people who know their families or friends in addiction. It's not your place to judge them. It's not your place to tell them what they need or when they're ready to heal. It's your place to send them as much connection and love as you can. And it doesn't mean you can't put boundaries. It doesn't mean you can't say, that was actually unacceptable, I need to detach a little bit. But you do it in a place of love, and you let them know that they're not a bad person. You're just protecting yourself. And I think the people who are the most compassionate in the world are those that have strong boundaries. So it's really important that people don't become enablers, but they also don't cut off the people, because, there's so many studies on it at the moment, and I won't go into details, but you can see it on TED Talks and books, that connection is what appeases the desire to escape and to, attach to something outside of them. Because when you feel connection inside of you, then the world just seems a bit better. And I guess what's tricky is there could be so much connection around you, but you can still feel disconnected. And that is something which I don't think any words can move someone through that. I think it's something that needs to be done on your own. It's something you need to, if you feel so crazy wild that you must go and consume, even waiting the first 30 seconds before you do it is the first step. This all or nothing mentality is hard. They say in the programs, in the rooms, in AA, one day at a time. And that's really all it is, because when our brain gets involved and we can't do this ever again, that's a big feat. It's like climbing Mount Everest when you've never walked up a hill. Like, it's too much to even contemplate. I would say find support. And for many, many, many people, the rooms have worked. For me, they've worked. I'm just at a place today where I'm in a place where it doesn't serve me geographically and work-wise, and I'm sure that'll change. I'm sure there'll be time where I need to recruit more support from strangers. I'm sure there'll be time where I need to recruit more support from friends. And the advice that I will say also is, myself included in the beginning, so many people think and really firmly hold on to the idea that if they stop drinking, consuming, or doing X, Y, or Z that they're addicted to, that their life will be dull and it will no longer be fun. That's so wrong. I stopped drinking and competed on Ninja Warrior and started a business where I got paid to travel around the world, and that was just within 2 years of doing it. And I never would have gotten up in the mornings hungover to go and train. I never would have trusted myself. For me, when you drink and you do something stupid, you don't just not trust yourself when you're drunk, you don't trust yourself for the rest of the week, because you're constantly reminding yourself that you don't trust who you are. To do that every week is, that's not fun. You can't call that fun. And I think to give yourself permission to explore what life would be like if you don't escape it. I've never come across anyone that's chosen sobriety whilst also really consciously choosing to work on themselves, that isn't more grateful, more aware, more excited, more connected, more vibrant than somebody who's chosen to drink. And someone who's chosen not to drink but also not done the work, you know? I think that's a really important thing. Like, this spiritual or human path, whatever you want to call it, can be hard work. But it's worth it to stay present. And you're not present when you drink, and so you're missing the life that you think you're enjoying.